Thank you so much for joining us. So really want to get into and thank you all for coming to this guided conversation, not a formal panel. We're going to look at real world examples. We're going to go past theory. We're going to get warm and energetic answers from these panelists. So again, welcome everyone. Happy New Year and welcome to the first Eventcombo conversation of 2026, corporate event design in 2026, creating impact and not noise. We are so delighted to have you here to help reframe your thinking for 2026 and beyond. My name is Evan Montgomery Pasha. I'm professional facilitator, moderator, and MC. I'm delighted to be here as your host of several upcoming webinars from Eventcombo in 2026. And thank you so much for having me. So we'll take care of a couple of small housekeeping items before we kick off our panel. Number one, this session is being recorded and you can watch the replay at any time after the event. So it will be shared as well. The other thing is that the chat is one of our biggest ways to stay connected to one another and a huge part of the experience. So don't be shy about sharing where you're from, where you are, and what you'd like to see for this panel throughout. So I will kick it off before we jump in with a simple question, which is, one word, how would you describe the last corporate event you attended? So everyone in the chat right now, go ahead and share with us in one word, how would you describe the last corporate event you attended? So we'll wait and see where everyone's coming in from. All right, well, while that's coming up, I'm happy to share our panelists' information with you. I know we're super excited to meet them. So please help me welcome a most global and esteemed panel. First, we have Shlomi Ashkenazi. He is the CEO and founder of Booking Master, blending hands-on event operations experience with AI-driven technology to solve real planning challenges. His teams help improve the ROE by simplifying logistics, enhancing attendee experience, and turning event data into actionable insight. Welcome, Shlomi.
Thank you for having me.
We're so happy to have you. Next, we have, with 25 years experience in managing a diverse portfolio, Michelle Brody, also known as MJ, has unlocked two new superpowers: virtual event management, not just webinars, but events and automation architecture. We love that word, architecture. So in 2025, these workflows, automations, and processes streamlined projects. And it was how she was able to keep balls in the air as a team of one, managing up to 16 events at a time, delivering a total of 62 events as a solo show. And we want to thank Michelle for her extra effort. It is 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning in Australia where she's joining us from. So that definitely shows commitment to sharing thought leadership with everyone. Good morning, Michelle.
Morning.
Morning. And last but not least, we have the wonderful Beth Lauren. She's a seasoned event strategist and planner with a proven track record of designing impactful, human-centered experiences for nonprofits, startups, and global corporations. With decades of hospitality and award-winning experience, she specializes in creating memorable multi-day conventions, innovative festivals, high-performing fundraisers, historic site tours, and incubator programs that align with each client's unique mission and goals. Good morning, Beth.
Good morning. Thank you for having me. I'm so excited.
Thank you so much for joining us. I can't believe the esteemed globalness of this panel. I think this is probably the most multi-time zone, multi-technical, multi-thought leadership space I've ever had the pleasure of being in. So thank you all so much for your commitment to joining us at Eventcombo. So we want to kick off this conversation with the ability to kind of get a new lens. We really want to know what we're looking at and where we can bring focus in 2026 and beyond. So really, we're talking about signals and noise. And I think, after the pandemic, we're getting things back up and everyone's like just going everywhere at one point and everything is new. And we can all just say, we want to cut through the noise. So I want to start here and look at really what has shifted and how events are designed for and what is fundamentally different from a few years ago. So Beth, I want to start with you on this one because we want to talk about traditional formats versus new. We talked about innovative. We talked about, what is new for your clients, where you're pushing new brands into that new space. So where do you think traditional formats have stopped working?
That is such a great question and something that I'm talking about with all of my clients. I think that we know that our attention spans are getting shorter, but I think that there's more to that. I think that we have less tolerance for noise, to your point. We have less tolerance for, and so I think sometimes we design the traditional, 1 hour keynote or 1 hour panel, or we really just kind of default to the formats that we're used to, where I think that people are actually hungry for more dense conversations and concentrated content as opposed to long form being spoken at. And so I think that there's really a need in event design to think about your content strategically, not only who is speaking, but what they're speaking about and for how long.
I love that dense conversations and concentrated content. I really want to concentrated content. I love that idea. And I think you're right that trying to keep people's attentions for, 45 minutes, an hour, which I realize I'm trying to do right now with all of these, but we'll do our best. But this idea of concentrated content in these dense nuggets, I really want value in a shorter amount of time versus trying to decipher it in as long as possible while my phone is dinging and then my Apple Watch is here and trying to figure that out. So want to make sure, like dense and concentrated content that we're picking. Love that. Michelle, I want to go over with you for a global perspective on this one, since I know that you're looking at events design from, a tech stack, which needs to support all of these attention items, which needs to support all of these newer technologies. How would you bring your thought leadership in with what Beth said about we need to sort of shift away from something older? How are you seeing that shift, and where is the technology sort of supporting that idea of shift?
Yeah, definitely. And I totally agree with everything that she just mentioned about the depth of conversation. And I think the big key around that intentional design piece is giving attendees the opportunity to have those dense conversations amongst themselves and with the thought leadership people. I think that's where things need to start shifting. And we're seeing that with the tech stacks out there. So, we at IBTM in Barcelona, we used Rosie in all the sessions to get all the session notes and do all the summaries and stuff like that. So that's shared not just with the attendees, but the speakers, and then, other content pieces can come from that. The leveraging of content post-event is something that that's part of the noise, unfortunately, but it's one of those sort of key pieces that people need to start paying more attention to. It's like there's so much value in the content at events that isn't being repurposed. So that's where, these new tech, not just in AI, it's just there's the tech around us that can really give value to those different pieces. And then the other one is also like conversation tech. So seeing things like, buyer intent on the floor, conversation tracking on the floor and things like that. Those are going to start helping us sort of lean into those conversations more and actually have actionable steps out of it after the event as well. So teams do need to start being aware of like how to use tech to enhance those deeper conversations and those connection points. And it's definitely out there. You just have to find it.
Yeah. And I love that, you're threading this needle of, and I know we're going to talk about it a little bit later. We're going to talk about AI. We're going to talk about, Shlomi, I know you're going to bring in a lot of our ROE, ROI conversations as we kind of get through our morning here in South Texas. But what I love is this idea about turning information into actionable items. And I really want to make sure that our listeners can really take that home with them, because I think when we're talking about cutting through noise, it's almost like cutting through that speed. It's like that speeding train. We're just going, and on to the next thing. And we're not really slowing it down to see what is actionable, what is useful, where is value coming out of this new noise. And when we cut through it, where are we really being able to stop and see, what value is a conversation on the trade show floor if it doesn't have a follow-up action? Like how can I connect you and then really be able to take that step? Like, yes, I do want to see you at 9:00 at your booth. I will bring the coffee. Hi, my name is, and then what is that follow-up? So really finding that journey, almost designing that journey with new formats, designing that journey with new tech can really draw that together. Yeah. Shlomi, I want to bring you into the conversation because we talked earlier about sort of doing things the way we've always done them, and I know you're bringing a lot of that CEO energy. And I really want you to start helping us see what are we doing out of habit still instead of doing with intention. Can you bring that sort of CEO lens to us and say we need to sort of break these bad habits and really start looking things with a design lens in order to do things intentionally?
I mean, if I go back and look at things, events are no longer about how they look. They are about what they produce. And the corporate teams are moving away from the wow moments and starting to respect the time and the intention and the outcomes of the individuals that are attending that event. Because obviously we are in a position that we are short in our intention and the time of focus that we are giving to stuff. And it is highly important to see that things that we are doing cannot be generic. They need to be personalized and focused that will address small audiences. I mean, what was true for 15K delegates 10 years ago, European Association study of the river of the Congress is no longer the same case. People are looking on focused stuff. Don't you think so?
Yeah, actually, we have a wonderful question in the chat right now that, we can open it up to all of you. But Shlomi, this is just a beautiful segue into what you just said. The question from Amna, and thank you so much for this, is are smaller niche events actually more effective than big flagship ones? So you opened it to 15,000 delegates, versus something smaller and niche. But, you also started saying that, respecting the time, respecting their focus, that we can't just be generalized wow now and paint everyone gets the same experience. So Shlomi, I'm going to actually ask you to start this off. Are the smaller niche design events more effective than flagship ones, or is there a time
I think
for both?
so, because we need to look at the engagement quality that we are creating with our audience, because people are getting to get a certain input. And once you're putting them in a niche environment that they are practically closer to the people that are very similar to what they do, and you give them the tools that they will be able to get by technology, but with technology that they don't feel, because the best quality of technology on events is the technology that works at the background. And if you're creating the right analytics from the beginning and know how to put the right people with the right tech, and they will be able to network with those people, you're going to create the best outcome. And those niche events are becoming now, after COVID especially, becoming now more and more quality-wise on the way that we see the full event architecture. I mean, the way that I see it, I'm in the old version when we talked about hybrid meetings and stuff similar to that. So the way that you architect stuff should be focused on the people and their time and their interest. Don't you think so?
Yeah, and thank you so much for bringing up architecture. And, Shlomi, you made so many wonderful points there. I want to make sure that we get them back to our audience. We talked about, you said, the smaller and the niche. We talked about the architecture for that group, drawing them closer, looking at what they need out of the event, and giving them that focus of, we're designing this for you, and that brings us such great points. Beth, you said, depth and dense and concentration, which you can do if you're designing for a smaller group. Michelle, you said you wanted to, leverage content, get back to people, get them closer to thought leadership, which if it's smaller and it's niche in design is more possible than that sort of global moment. But we know it's not possible for everyone. Beth, I want to bring you into this conversation since you have, a really wide swath of different styles and types of the events. Given that, you're looking at fundraisers, not-for-profits, corporates, festivals, brand launches, can you speak a little bit to, is that smaller niche still where you see your clients going in design with a specific, smaller group in mind, or, for certain things that you need to attract a lot of people, is there still value in a large style event?
I think that's a great question, and I think it depends on the client. I think that's an annoying answer, but I've been on trade show floors that don't feel like a trade show floor, and I think that's also the key. I think after the pandemic, we've sort of exhausted ourselves of walking miles and miles and aisles of booths. I think it's more about experiential, and I think guests in smaller events probably feel like you understand them a little bit more because you can pay more attention to who they are, what they want, what their pain points are, But I work with a lot of clients that have multiple different types of stakeholders at one event that all need to get different things out of the event. I think it's still possible, but to Shlomi's point, you need to respect their time and understand that you can't have wall-to-wall programming all day long. You have to give space for those natural conversations to happen, those natural connections to happen. And I think utilizing the technology, as MJ and Shlomi have mentioned, really is going to take it up a notch, especially in the last couple of years. I remember pre-pandemic, I went to a convention, and I think that trend started then, to be honest with you. And I think the pandemic really just accelerated it, because I went to a large convention, but I didn't actually attend the convention. It's terrible to say as an event planner. I just went to the ancillary events, and so many people said that the 30 or 40,000 person trade show floor felt so noisy, to our point earlier, that they couldn't actually make genuine connections. But there were a ton of genuine connections that I still have today that were made off of the trade show floor at those smaller niche events.
And that's such a great lens for us to start looking through, is that I go to this conference to only spend time in the smaller places away from the main conference. Like, what a great human answer, and such a great segue into sort of our next lens about designing with intent. So, we've heard we have to cut through the noise. We really need to start looking at the who's and the what's. We need to start looking at what the intent is of our programs. And showing to your point, 15,000 people, just here's your space, here's some cool wow keynotes, here's some, here's a drone show and fireworks and famous person and, some people on trade show floor, and there's your event. It's like, that's too broad. It's not doing anything for me. So I want to get into this idea of designing for intent. And one of the things that we talked about before was really what we're talking about when we say the word design. So I had the pleasure of talking to all of these panelists before we jumped on. And one of the things we wanted to clarify was what we meant individually by the word design. And I think what we're shifting away from is design in terms of aesthetic elements. So floor plans and lights and colors and to bring that, in terms of a visual experience, but really looking at design as architecture. We talked about building the house, really looking at who's allowed to ask all the questions to determine what the functionality and intent and return has to be, and who are we doing it for? So moving into this designing with intent lens, we talk about engagement. That's the buzzword, right? We have to have engagement. Well, what does that mean? What are we designing for? What does engagement look like? Michelle, I want to start with you looking through moving away from, and you and I talked about the same thing, building a house, right? When we're talking about about design, we're talking about who is determining the blueprint that we then give to our builders, right? Yeah. And so many of us just go right to building. So what do you think are driving these decisions right now, the logistics versus design? Who is driving that train? Is it just goals? Is it just finances? Can we bust open this conversation about what's the decision driver?
And I think that comes down to who's in your team and what their experience background is a lot, because, events specifically is always the bridge. I've never seen, ops is similar, but events really straddles all of the departments or all of your core pillars of your company, right? So we have to be able to balance and manage expectations from finance, budgets, if there's no ROI, you're not getting your budget back. Sales, the intentions that they require from the data that you can capture and bring in to your registration forms or on the floor conversations, all that intense stuff. What is that going to do for them and how's that going to move their needles? And then also an ops perspective, there's usually legal involved, always partnerships and sponsorships involved. So we are this bridge. So when we talk about being the architect, that's why we have to be the architect. It can't be finance driven, it can't be marketing driven, it can't be sales driven, because it's everybody's needs that we have. You're a magician. You have to basically know how to bring everyone's needs into an event and deliver it. And so I think sometimes it's about the questions, and I was talking to another events professional about this just the other day. It's not necessarily about the questions, but how we go in with curiosity, or how we can go in and start to pull those threads from those different pillars or from the different stakeholders about what's important to them. And I think my favorite one is just to start with, why are your people coming? So especially if it's a fundraising event or a sales event, it doesn't really matter. It's why are your people coming? What is it they've bought into that's going to continue to drive your event forward, and can create your portfolio and all your webinars and all the bits and pieces off the side of it, and even the ancillaries. So,
yes, absolutely. And I think you're drawing a lot of these good architecture moments. You were talking about bridges, talking about building, talking about pillars. And one of the best points I think that you touched on is that the event is the thing that straddles all the pillars of our organization. But if we only use one lens from each pillar to drive the event, then we're missing the why. So if it's only sponsorships and the sponsors are happy, but the event experience isn't designed well for the attendees, their sponsors aren't going to get the people they need in the conversations to follow back up. But if we're not designing experiences that improve our sponsors or look at the sales or try to drive numbers in a certain way, then we're not meeting our ROI as a business. And you're right, we're not going to get our budget back. We're not going to get our CEO buy-in. So, our magic power, as it were, is to find out what does success look like from all the pillars of our organization, and how do we put that into process? So, we have some great conversations, and thank you everyone who is putting in the chat. Actually, we talked about budget, which we're going to talk about, Patricia, I promise. We have some great questions about changes that can perform better. So we're going to get to all of these in a minute. Sudo talked about what are we going to measure? How do we keep them event as it's over? But there's an interesting question, and we're talking about designing experiences. And Javier, I'm going to bring up your question is designing experiences, is personalization worth the effort, or is it overhyped? And I think when we're looking right now, and Shalemi and Beth, I want to bring you into this. We're talking about what gets measured. Is that the bonus? We're talking about, are we over designing and under delivering? So looking at this question as our lens, Beth, I'll start with you. Where are we looking at, is personalization worth the effort? Is giving them that choice and that focus worth doing the design for, or do we just kind of keep moving in a more broad direction?
With your permission, I would like to take this a bit different. I would like to talk about the design, that we are talking about the outcome, and start our architecture backward. Because at the end of the day, when you talk about an event, there should be an outcome. People are attending for a certain reason. The organizer or the owner of that event, if it is a society or a corporate client, has a certain intention when he organizes it. So when you do the architecture, like you build a house, you know that you want 4 floors, and you know that you need each floor a bathroom. At the same way, if we take the design and we start looking at it differently, what should the attendee do differently after this event? What do I want him to do? Approach my exhibitors, or talk about the content, or be my ambassador outside? So once we take it like that, it will be much more easier for us to address the budget issues, to address the return of engagement or experiment, or the return of investment that will make things much more to do about people. What's worth their time, and how do we move the business forward? This will make our life much easier in this question.
But I love that you're using this lens. If we have the lens of the why, everything has to pass through that lens. Budget, does it get us to the why? Sponsorship, does it get us to the why? If we're looking at experiences, or my favorite example is I had a client and the CEO said, I want to have a magician. And everyone's like, okay, boss. like, how do you say no? Or like, I want to add the shiny new tech tool. And you're like, I want to say no. But if we're reverse engineering from success, you know, it gives you the CYA or the conversation to say, you know, Shlomi, we see that this is where we're trying to get. Can you help me understand how that purchase or that hire or that tech gets us to the why? And it gives you at least a conversation to make everything worth it. Beth, I saw you come off mute. Give us your expert opinion.
I was just going to say, to piggyback on that, it's not only the why, it's the how. Like, we need to do a feasibility analysis of everything that we're doing. If yes, we can certainly do it, you know, have a magician if it makes sense with the why of everybody, you know, if it goes through the lens, why, how, at what point. Like, you don't want it to, if the magician pops out in the middle of a keynote, it's going to seem very strange. If you have a roaming magician in the middle of a party that's, you know, supposed to be interactive and fun and get people to kind of relax and let their hair down, that's a very, very different why. And it's also a very, very different how we're going to get it done, because sometimes with certain stakeholders, you have to reverse engineer and figure out, well, it's their why, like they want it. So how can we get it done? Keeping in mind everyone else's why and everyone else's goals, so that it doesn't seem completely out of left field that we have a magician walking around our event, for example.
Keep it meaningful. Is exactly your point. Like, if it's an intentional, meaningful addition, it's always going to benefit and complement the
Absolutely.
Outcome. And if it doesn't,
and if you could, right. And it gives you that lens now. I mean, all of you have talked about, we need to get here. And so does that decision help us get here? And if it doesn't, it's a great idea for something else. It's still a great idea, boss, for something else. And I love that you guys have opened that up, because we really start needing to have permission to cut through the noise of add, more to say, wait, and what I'm hearing from all of you right now is that we need to stop the train and say, where is the intent? Where is the why? What are we building towards? And what does engagement look like? We want to talk really quickly about measurement. We've had 1 or 2 questions in the chat about how do you know something is successful? How do you keep it successful after? So I want to ask all of you about measurement and metrics. So we really know, because I think sometimes we're like, attendance was the only number that we've really tracked, or dollars raised was the only number that we tracked. But is that telling us if our event is successful? So I want to open this back up. So what gets measured besides attendance, and how do you set metrics that actually show you if you've reached your why? Michelle, Beth, Shlomi, who wants to take that one first? Great one for all of you.
Experience, engagement, and if simply the survey that we are doing at the end of that event or session, it's getting the grade of 4 and above in a scale of 5.
Okay.
Because ask the people what they think. Make them a part of your journey. Do not lead them. I mean, we are now in a time that we cannot predict demand. We need to personalize content and optimize our logistics accordingly. We need to think about not to overinvest on moments that look good in social, but do not change behavior. I mean, this is one of the biggest challenges of the organizers in total.
Yes.
Everyone looks at how it looks like.
Yeah.
What does it look like?
It's not mattering anymore, because we are in a different era that each and every one of us has an additional smarter employee at his Perplexity or a ChatGPT or Claude or God knows what he's using. So times are changing, and the demand or the quality of the stuff that we need to do or predict is changing. So
Absolutely.
this is the way I don't know.
the way I
Michelle,
look
go ahead.
at the question
Relevance
is,
with scale.
well, I look at relevance, definitely, and that's exactly what I was going to, that's my sort of my lens on ROI and measuring what matters. Is that comes back to that whole pillar conversation. It's like, you've got to find the things that matter to all the people, because if you can't measure all of those things, you are going to lose the buy-in from that key pillar. So I do kind of always feel that that's your base point. It's like, that's the thing that's going to move the needle for that lead, like that's going to change their behavior, or that's going to move the needle for their buy-in, or whatever that looks like for your different stakeholders. Those things have to be measured, and there's going to be multiple different ways to measure it. And you have to understand that, and you have to understand where you're going to capture it. Is it the follow-up survey? Is it the post-session survey? Is it, you know, is it the registration form? Is it like an email during the registration pre-event campaign that you're going to be asking multiple questions or follow-ups or looking for a response? Like, knowing where you can get the data throughout your whole journey. It doesn't all have to be at the top. It doesn't all have to be at the bottom. I think this is what people need to start realizing, as well as like, you need to start sprinkling it throughout, because we are all very time poor and we don't want to be bombarded at the top and we don't want to be bombarded at the end. So sprinkling it throughout is like, that's
so I just want to make sure I've captured that beautiful nugget well, just to reiterate, because I think what you just said is such a beautiful thing, is we we need to not only know what success looks like and what is that metric, but we need to know where in the journey to capture the data. Because you're right, we've all heard that like, I'm time poor. So if the registration form is 6 pages with 22 questions, here's my name, here's my phone number, here's my credit card, I'm done, right? But where can we capture what are you excited the most for? How can we create success for you? If a sponsorship wants to know how many dollars we sold, okay, well, where do we get that data and how do we report it back? If we want to know people like the educational sessions, if we wait 2 days later or a week later, are they going to remember that they like the session? So mapping their journey, looking at your data and mapping that on top of that journey is such a, I just want to make sure we're not losing this data journey as well and designing the metric opportunities with the attendee experience. That's amazing. Beth, I want to make sure you have a chance to get in here. Yeah.
I have very little to add. I was just going to say, even if your goal is to measure attendance, it shouldn't just be attendance. It should be attendance from X type of company, new attendees from X type of companies, active leads, non-active leads, partners. There's many different ways to measure attendance. And I think sometimes folks get into the trap of looking good on social media. Like Shlomi said, we want a packed room. Well, I mean, how big is your room? And do you want your room packed, or do you want your room intentionally filled with the right people that are going to deliver goals for all of the other people in the room?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think this is a great...
add 3 different layers here, before, during, and after.
Right.
I mean, it's not just one layer in the event. The journey is long. I mean, you need to do at each stage a different scale of skills or personalization in order to maximize your attendance, but also to get to the best ROE or ROI or whatever you want to measure at the end.
Or ROI.
Which is a perfect segue, which is what we're going to actually dive into next. And it's such a perfect, because we just had a question in the chat that said, love all of what you said, but given all of these metrics, how do you actually know if your event was worth it? And I think all of you just kind of touched on it, which is, you have to set what success looks like. And what that success is change behavior. Did we achieve the right behavior change or the desired behavior change? I talked to all of you about, earlier about how do we look at defining the event design? And it's, bringing 2 people or 2 groups of people together that changes behavior. And that could look like a lot of different things. Shlomi said, like, are they acting differently? What are they saying and doing in public? Did they learn what you wanted them to learn? Yes. Did they get the skill you needed them to take away? Did they meet the people? Michelle, you said this. Are they having the conversations and actioning those conversations with people? Beth, you said, have they changed their attitude toward the festival, the corporation, the not-for-profit? So we're looking at all these different ways to change behavior. And in the end, all of you have said just now, how do you know if the event was successful? Can you measure if that behavior was done or changed? And all of you have said, talking about return on experience, return on investment. And I really want to move into that conversation. I can't believe we're halfway through this already. I mean, where is this time going? And thank you all for putting those questions in the chat. Want to take a quick chat poll right now, little pulse. Thank you so much for everyone. What do you feel is overproduced right now in events? Like in your corporate events, what you've seen, what do you feel is like totally overhyped right now? So go ahead and throw that in the chat and want to look at this. We want to talk about what's worth the investment and where do we measure it? So if our budgets are tighter, which we all know, and expectations are higher, which we are all working with, where does something have to shift? And I think the first answer all of us is like, oh, I'll use AI now, right? And we've talked about this is what's going to get me there. I think Shlomi said it's our new digital bestie, right? It's our new digital co-worker. And this kind of goes into like, this is how we're going to measure it or make it easier to do more with less. But 2 of you had a really interesting perspective on this. So the first question I want to ask to get this conversation going, like where are we returning this investment and how are we getting there with less people to do it? How can teams use AI and technology to deliver measurable ROE and ROI, Shlomi? Like where can we, is this intentional? Can we use it to get to that point?
I mean, on that aspect as well, I want to go back to the before, during, and after. Each and every one of us has a website, right? People do not like to read. They don't like emails anymore. It's already 40 years. When they come to the website, if the website is long, it drives them crazy. So imagine this. Let's create an AI agent, voice one, that speaks all languages of your participants. Then when you hit the website, that AI agent will start answering any information that has at that website instead of people looking on pages. Create a short AI-oriented video by the chair of the Congress that will welcome them instead of him writing 3 or 4 pages, and then it will make him happy because he's now on stage suddenly. This is why he's chairing the event, right? And at the same time, one of the main things that you want to have before is the fact that you want to check that people are going to show up. So let's create a phone conversation generated with an AI agent that will ask the person person if it is a convenient time to talk to him, and if he's going to show up, yes or no. If in a regular basis in a 300 people event we would have done it, it would have cost us at least one employee for 3 days, right?
Right.
Today you can do it with an AI agent in less than 10 minutes, setting up and having your coffee and putting the right prompt to ask the right question.
Right.
And then go to the during. Let's personalize our attendance, meaning that let's start grouping them and let's start giving them in a very basic identity from the name badge. Let's start giving them a QR code so they will be able to read each other. People are coming to B2B events to network. Give them the best possible experience. Do not hide. Expose, and let's create working groups that are practically focused to 2 questions. Ask at your registration form, I am good at and I'm looking for. Then you're going to be able to matchmake between those people because they are coming to me similar, or people that they are practically looking for their expertise, or they are happening to look for someone that is looking for what they are doing. During the event, allow asking questions in a maximum way. Instead of bringing the microphone, allow them to ask through the app, and make sure that you check those questions and monitor them via AI. And at the end of the day, after the event, run proper VODs, expose the data post-event, so people will be able to learn, because no one can be at the same session or 6 session halls at the same time. I promise you.
Right.
So
and that's such a good point. Michelle also, had brought up the same thing to support that comment, which was there's so much content. Beth, you said people want rich content, but we also can't be in all places at all times. So how do you make them feel good about their choice to go to Beth's session and missing Shlomi's session? Michelle says, hey, I've got you. We're going to take all the, not just the translations, but we're going to take the whole transcript. We're going to break it down to the points. We're going to put it in the app. So, even if you didn't get there, we're going to give you the nuggets. We're going to make sure that you got some salient points, because you've told us at the beginning of your data journey, this is what you value. You value having choice, but you also value making sure you walk away with your rich content. I absolutely love that. Michelle, to your point, we talked about, and Shlomi, thank you so much for that, and telling us how we can use these things to create real return, right? Setting it up is so powerful to create personalized moments. Michelle, you made a point earlier about AI as an automation. Is it a skill or just a tool? And I think that was a really interesting conversation to start about. Some of us are using it very transactionally, just like, oh, it's writing my scripts, or it's optimizing a data point, I'm feeding it in. Like, it's just very transactional. But you and Shlomi are pushing us into this idea of skill set, of automation, of value, and showing business returns. Can you touch on that for us?
Yeah, I think there has been in the last 4 to 5 months, and it could just be my algorithm, but I feel like there is a lot more AI noise in the event tech world, especially on LinkedIn right now. And what's concerning me about it is that people are using AI totally transactionally, to your point. Like, it's writing the copy, it's writing the blog, it's writing the email campaign, sort of that sort of tool. What I'm not seeing, and what I'm seeing pushback on, is event managers going like, well, this is just another skill that I need to have. And like, why do I have to have the tech stack skill? And why do I have to have the sales skill? And why do I have the marketing skill? And why do I have to? It's like, it's not that you have to have it, but if you don't start learning how to use automations, workflows, and encompassing that is AI, you're going to be left in the dark. And I kind of had this thing where in my company, I started in marketing a million years ago, and I chose not to learn Facebook ads. It was like a conscious decision. I was like, I don't need to specialize in that. Like, I don't need that tool in my bucket. I'm good. But if I was to have that same conscious decision to say no to AI and automation, I would be out of work within 6 months, let alone a year. Like, you are gonna start being left behind. And the other thing I think people need to understand is there was an amazing tech leader who made the comment about, the way people talk about AI is, and the analogy is that it's like trying to sell a refrigerator that runs on electricity. All refrigerators run on electricity, right? So what we're trying to explain is that all platforms actually run with AI already there. Like, it's a thing. Yeah. You're already using it. You just didn't know it. And it's been that way for many, many, many years. What's becoming different is that we're consciously looking at ways to manipulate or integrate AI into tech stacks and workflows and that kind of thing. So I feel that in order to start measuring what matters and, mapping those touch points and all that kind of stuff, it's about understanding the tech that's out there and being curious about it and not saying yes to everything, and building it yourself so that it does what you need it to do. And I think this is always the biggest key. It's like,
absolutely,
being well and build it for you. Don't just take anything at face value. There is no such thing as a one and done event platform, and there never will be, because events are so diverse. I mean, look at Beth's portfolio, from fundraisers to events. Like, you run them so different. You don't need all the things, or you don't need to even measure the same things for all those different kinds of events. So therefore your tech stack shouldn't be the same for all those events. Yeah. So I think people just need to start leaning into the fact that it is a skill, and it's not to be frightened of, or like, wary of, or, thinking that you can just consciously say no to it. Unfortunately, it's a bit of a yes, you have to say yes to it.
So I love this, because I think you're also answering the big question, which is AI going to take my job? And
No.
The answer is no. But if you don't learn how to do AI with your job, then you will lose your job.
Yeah,
so
100%.
I think it's reframing this question. It's not going to do your job for you, but it has to do your job with you for you to be successful. And I think what we're all afraid of is if I learn it or if I use it, then someone's going to replace me. It's like, no, but if they find the person who does use it well and automate and can work more on the business instead of in the business, and also can speak the language of your competitors, it's like, oh, if this is one of the biggest problems we're noticing in our data stack, let's say, Shelmy, after we said, oh, the registration was slow or it was clunky, a lot of people in the chat saying this was, something that was hard. How do we make it better? How do we add an agent that welcomes you and says yes, and how can we help you? And we're going to solve your problem, or make it more personal with those videos, be able to translate it into multiple languages. How do you use that and reframe it to keep going forward?
Can I just touch back quickly on that, Devin, with the personalization point, just really quick? Someone had mentioned about, how do you get the buy-in from the different teams? How do you measure success? And this, I just want to pull this all back in. Okay. If it's a sales event, if this is about your sales team getting leads, moving leads, converting leads, the agent phone call thing is great if it's like a 15,000 person conference, right? But if this is a conference where you're building trust with your consumer and your attendee, those phone calls should be personalized by your team who are going to be on the ground on the day, welcoming them into your event. It absolutely should be the first touch point where that trust and that relationship and that authority is built. And I think that, and someone asked, what's the thing that's missed? The follow-up. Because if they've already had the touch point at the top, then it makes more sense that there's going to be a touch point at the bottom from that person. It's not just I met you on the floor and I'm going to maybe follow up with you afterwards. It's that whole journey conversation again. But
right, you said it's a journey, but it has to have a full circle. And I think we've talked a lot about that and finding that full circle moment, and how, that's what AI is a skill. Like, how can you utilize it in a way that frees you up personally to be a part of that journey and give you that time? Beth, I want to bring you in as we shift kind of away from the AI conversation back into, we've asked, and there's a ton of questions in the chat about personalization, about what does ROI look like for my event? Is design worth it? How do I measure that? Is it better for which type of lead? Where am I making mistakes? So going back to just looking at your scope of work, I want to ask you the question, what are areas that you're seeing people pull back from in terms of kind of cutting through this noise, or whether it's AI or automations? What are people leaning into that are making more personal impact?
I think it's really, people are trying to consider all, as Shlomi mentioned, the time thing, all aspects of who someone is as a human. So not just saying these are marketing people.
Right.
Okay, well, they're marketing people from what kind of companies, and what level are they, and who are they speaking to, and who are they working with? And I think it's for my clients, it's really just looking at, a lot of them have personal conversations, as Michelle mentioned. They will have personal conversations with their stakeholders and really listen to them. And sometimes it's hard conversations of we didn't like this, we didn't feel included, this didn't seem like us, or whatever it is, and really taking those learnings and trying to implement them as much as you can. And I think also when we talk about measurement, we have to think about return on relationships. I have a mentor, Jim Kahn. He calls it ROR. And return on relationships is the biggest thing. And I think that relationship piece and that trust piece is where personalization really is going to shine, whether you're using an AI tool or not. I think you have to really understand who you're speaking to and what it is that they need to hear. I hope that wasn't too vague.
No, I love that, because I think you're bringing that human aspect back in. And, when we talk about AI and automation, I think all of you supported the point that it's the person who has to do it. And then you have to be able to go back and use that and take that data. And, we're looking at, like you said, I just put it back in the chat so we call, remember it, return on relationships. Because,
I'm taking it to my jargon, 100% ROR now. No problem.
Right, no problem. That's it. That's the only thing we're measuring, guys. You can leave now. That's your point for today's corporate moment. Return on relationships. But what a beautiful way to think about it. Everything all of you have said is really supported on that one concept of what is the relationship? What is your relationship to your company? What is your relationship to your CEO? What is your relationship to a client you already have? What is your relationship to a client you're trying to acquire? And it's all about those conversations. Even your internal relationships with sales, marketing, logistics, legal, operations, production, those relationships all have to work together to bridge to make these things work. But you have to understand what relationship you want at the end and what you want your client to have a relationship with you. Are you building trust? Are you the trusted advisor for the big wow experience, for the niche experience, for the new information, for the better connections? I would hope that each of you have a point going into your event, but this is how we want people to be left thinking of us, the perception of us. Fantastic.
Yeah. I think events used to be almost like a museum, right? It was like more like I'm going to observe. And then it became super interactive when we introduced experiential, which I think used to be sort of this other box that
there's this whole other thing, right?
Now we're realizing, hey, this is all the same exact thing.
Well, we are, I can't believe it, 10 minutes till the end of this event. And I promise you all a very quick lightning round, which I think will answer some of the questions. So we're going to go into lightning round really quick. I'm going to ask all of you one question. You're going to give me your quick two-word answer. And then we're going to go in to see if we have time for Q&A. So lightning round, we're going to go in a row. What design choice should we prioritize in 2026? Michelle.
Why the relationships, again, basically the design choice is intentional with the why are they coming? What is that relationship? Why are they coming?
All right, the why, designing for why. Shlomi, what is one thing that we need to prioritize in 2026?
Design the event journey backwards from a clear business outcome.
Design backwards for their favorite. Designing backwards.
And remove the uncertainties by AI by planning.
Yes, and we're going to remove those uncertainties. Beth, one things that we're going to prioritize in 2026.
New event formats. Try something new.
New event formats. All right. One thing we're going to stop doing. I'm going to go the other direction. Beth, one thing we need to stop doing.
Buying promotional products that don't serve anyone or anything.
Ooh, buying promotional products that don't. Swag for
I'm
no
not
reason.
saying all of them don't. I'm just saying sometimes we spend a lot of money on something and then I find it at a thrift store, 6 months later.
Or in the garbage by the time you get home. My worst case is seeing it in airport trash cans, like when you're walking through and you're seeing it in the airport. All right, Shlomi, one thing we absolutely have to stop doing.
Stop over-designing moments that look impressive, but don't change behavior and do not add anything to that event.
All right, and Michelle, one thing we need to stop doing.
Please stop doing insight keynotes. I can read the insight report myself. Give me an opportunity to have conversations about that keynote insight with you or people in the room.
Ooh, I love that. She's like, listen, I'm gonna drop a bomb right now. She's like, I can read it myself. Bring someone interesting in. Love it. All right, last thing, quick roundabout. Shlomi, I'm starting with you. What is one thing we can experiment with in 2026?
Use AI for personalization instead of using it for the entire event. Make sure that people will get what they want and not the best that you can give them.
Personalization, love it. Beth? Something to experiment with. You said new formats, but
I was going to say AI in general because it's something, I'm one of those people that's a little bit, on the fence, trying it. I know that I use it, but I don't know how to use it intentionally. So I'm holding myself accountable.
There, we're going to help you with that. Michelle?
Yeah, experiment with automations. Like get your workflow, things that are the tedious, taking up cognitive space that you can possibly automate, do it. It will literally change your life.
Fantastic. Well, thank you all for that lightning round. We do have a few moments to answer some questions. I want to go back. There were a few about budget, what works well, which events need to be designed, but there was a lot of budget and revenue questions. So I really want to make sure that we touch on that. Ava had asked, when should revenue come into the conversation? Is it planning or after? There was another question earlier about, you asked for budgets, when should we look at that? When is that coming into the design conversation, for bigger events, smaller events? So let's touch on budgets and revenue really quickly. Beth, I'm going to start with you because you have a lot of different clients that, we're measuring all different ways from Sunday. When does budget come into play with your design and when does revenue come into play?
I talk about budget and revenue immediately. I call it the event business model because we talked about how many different types of events that I do. There's different business models for every event and every year I think you should reevaluate the event business model. The landscape does not look the same. Your attendees might not be able to invest as much as they did in the ticket price. Your sponsors may not be able to invest as much. I think sometimes we need to look at that shift and not just expect that our buyers' behaviors are going to stay the same.
Absolutely. And you think designing backwards, it goes back to what Yuval said is like, if this is the revenue we have to make, let's work backwards. This is what our our sponsors can only spend, let's work backwards instead of like trying to chase it. I think that's a problem a lot of us have had is we're trying to chase this number without intentional design.
Devin, to that point, the one thing I also find that event teams need to start asking more as well is like the revenue thing at the end. So similarly, thinking sales event lens here. If your team's like, oh, we've got to make 2 million from this event, you go, awesome. What is the average sale price of the deals done at these events to know how many deals we've got to do at these events? Is that even a feasible number to start with? Because if they're trying to give you these like huge numbers that you've got to help them reach, sometimes it's not actually feasible. And you need to understand how to work backwards to understand what you need to unlock over here. And like, you know, you might have to have that conversation and be like, well, that's not really, if your average sale of a deal at this event is only like $12,000, that's impossible. So yeah, those sorts of questions.
So let's set, and it's also setting our expectations for what success looks like and then measuring against that. It's like, hey, if we set a realistic goal, we all know our SMART goals, right? Smart, measurable, attainable, right? So if we know what that is and we exceed it, then we know what we can build off of. But if you set this number that's just based in fairyland, that you know, your budget team is like, good, go make $2 million. You're like, how
yeah,
can we do that?
Exactly. So ask the question.
There is a very important aspect that you need to look at, that is the life circle that you have with that client. If it is a client of yours, that is a core client, one gold recommendation would be is to create a 365 life circle of that event. So if you want to get the same outcome or to increase the outcome, if you revisit your client and you create, imagine LinkedIn. I mean, all of us came into this session because of LinkedIn. Imagine that you create with your close client, if it is a core client, an environment that is a closed environment LinkedIn that you allow people to connect between them during 365, or publish your own VOD in this 365, not LinkedIn, a closed network. That way you're going to be able to plan backwards and you're going to be sensitive to your audience 365. But if it is a one-time gig that you're getting, it is not something that you're going to be able to do. Planning backwards also going to be something that is 100% on the client. This is why all of us need to aim to have core clients and then to live with them 365. This will make our lives or the design in the right direction. This is my 5 cents into the discussion.
I love it because you know, you guys have hit on so many core threads, you know, when we're looking at design in 2026, which is what we promised, right, from today's conversation is core threads. And I just want to repeat some of them back to you in our last couple of minutes, but it's designing is about relationships. And I think that's something that has woven through our entire relationship, you know, whether we're looking at corporate events or not-for-profits, whether you're looking at your core clients that you've had that you continue to design with over time, or ones that you need to design for because they need to be acquired. It's all about the relationship. One of the other things that you all touched on was this idea of working backward. And we said that in a couple of different iterations, but you have to know what success looks like before you can design to get there. And it can be measured a lot of different ways. And we talked about a journey, that every relationship that you have and every design choice that you make is about a journey. It's where are they? Where do you want them to go? How do you bring them full circle? How many touch points are there on the journey? Michelle, to your point, how many different data points can you get at every single touch point on this particular journey? And how can you use all of that to ensure that you can show measurable results? But a lot of us just go to, hey, we need to have 5,000 people in the room. Well, we got 5,000. Did anything come of it? Oh, was something supposed to come of it? Yeah. There's a lot of questions in the chat. Like, how do we know it's successful? You have to go back to what was the desired behavior change. And that can look for new outcomes, for old outcomes, for new customer acquisition, for festival attendees, for corporate fundraising. You know, it all goes back to the timeline, the relationship, and the journey. And I thank you all for giving us permission to stop and give us permission to look at what journeys can look like now, that they can look different, that they can be measured differently, that we can have different and better conversations. We can measure what that looks like. And, you know, Shlomi, Michelle, thank you for bringing us the idea that we can look at tools. We can look at tools that help us automate, that keep the relationships moving and give us the time and freedom to do that if we're doing more with less, to use tools that give us that time to build the return on relationships. Michelle, Shlomi, and Beth, thank you so much for your expertise, your thought leadership, and your commitment to our industry. We are so honored to have you join us. Michelle, thank you for being up at 2 o'clock in the morning. Plus, I don't know if you're going to bed or staying awake now, so we'll say good morning and good night. Want to make sure that we can stay connected as well. So everyone, please make sure you stay connected with Eventcombo on their LinkedIn and of course on their YouTube channel to get fantastic conversations like this to help you build your relationships in 2026 and beyond. There is a link in the chat if you'd like to stay connected with me. We have a little gift for you at the end of that on how you can continue to spark design decisions like this in your events. Thank you all so much. It was a pleasure to have you. Wish you an excellent day and happy 2026.
Thank you.
Thank you.